eliminating the last minute jitters. Cool. Awesome. Well, so I say we're ready to get going here. It's going to be a fairly relaxed format. We kind of just wanted to, have this webinar to open up a chance for people to ask questions about our trends report. Thank you to everybody who did send through some questions through our type form. We've got those listed out and we're going to get to them. And if you have any questions along the way, just add them into the chat. We can't hear or see you guys, so I'll be paying attention to the chat there, and I can mark things as questions as they come through. And we also have some of those pre-submitted questions that we'll be answering as well as we go. So I'm just going to kind of facilitate the thing and send questions to these guys. So Jared, do you want any opening remarks?
No, I'm just thankful that everybody's here. Let me just do a quick introduction so everybody knows who everyone is. We have Lenny Ford on the call. He is our Director of Technology and a master at all things conversion related. We have Todd McCall, who is our Director of Marketing, handles all marketing for Blackfin, and has been handling digital marketing projects for many, many years. And lastly, Director of Content, John Gimple, who is our host and will be facilitating this discussion. And John's got just a wide range of digital marketing experience as well. And I'm Jared Smith, CEO, founder. John, back to you.
Cool, great.
I just wanted to say that. That just...
No, it's got a nice introduction. Sure. So let's get some of these questions. One of the things that we got a number of questions about and that we've gotten the most response from is probably the part where we talk about niche marketing and how it relates to sort of practicing marketing a law firm. So I thought we would start there. One of the really good questions, and it's kind of a two-parter that I'm going to send over to Jared, is can firms take a niche approach without scaling back the number of practice areas they handle? And then the other part of that as well is, if so, does it make sense to have multiple websites dedicated to specific practice areas, or does it make sense just to have one where you try to focus on many areas? Yeah.
So that's a great question, and to answer the first question, I would say yes, absolutely. You can absolutely kind of take a niche approach with maybe the current site that you have, or building a new site. The second part of the question was, do you need two separate sites to handle this approach? And that is currently what I'm recommending. So let's just take, for example, if you're a personal injury law firm and you just do PI, I think, in 2016, 2017, a lot of attorneys would say you're very specialized. I think gone are the days that we had these general practice law firms where, somebody did bankruptcy and estate planning and PI and, family law. But I really think moving into 2018, if you are, singularly focused, and what I mean by that is, again, maybe you're just a personal injury law firm, but you do all types of personal injury law, car accident, med mal, dog bites. I don't think that is going to work for too much longer. And the reason why is, especially in larger cities, if you do searches in New York, Los Angeles, Chicago for a dog bite lawyer, you're probably going to find a website that's 100% dedicated to dog bites. The same would be true for medical malpractice or truck accidents or motorcycle accidents. And I think we've seen that trend really in the last 12 to 18 months where, certain attorneys are really niching down within, a very specified practice area like personal injury. And I just think that if you have the option as a consumer to use an attorney that just does dog bites or appears to just handle dog bite cases versus a general PI law firm, I think you're going to go with the firm that just does that one practice area. And so, that's kind of my answer on that, I would say at this point in time. And again, if you're thinking about doing this, the best maybe first step to take is to get a domain name that's very, very niche focused on whatever area you want to get into. So if you have a site right now, again, you're a general PI attorney, keep that site going. You don't want to lose anything that you may have there, but start a dog bite site or a med mal or a birth injury or a truck accident site, name it something like, the truckaccidentlawyers.com or clevelandtruckaccidentlawyers.com, something along those lines, and get that ball rolling kind of as an insurance policy, if you will, in the event that down the road, consumers are saying, hey, listen, I want somebody who's an expert in this particular niche.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. And again, just to remind you guys, I saw a few more people trickle in. If you have any questions about whatever we're talking about, or about anything in general related to Trends Report or just marketing your law firm, feel free to ask chat questions, and we'll make sure to get to them a lot of times. So the next question, something I wanted to shoot Todd's way, something that we talk about a lot when it comes to website content for law firms is to have long form content. It's really good for search engines, and the data would show that it's also really good for engagement metrics. But one of the questions we got was, outside of increasing length and making long form content, what are some other really key ways of making content more engaging?
Well, there's really all kinds of things that you can do to be more engaging, but there's a few things that could come to mind. One is not being afraid to be personal. Be yourself, and if you have something of a story, share that. That absolutely belongs there in your content. Another really important piece that we see done right and wrong out there is having content that's worthwhile, having stuff that really is high quality content that people are going to want to sink their teeth into, that's going to answer their actual questions, and be shareable. It's something that's a lot of folks who are doing there's a good place for a lot of content is at the research stage, because there's people out there who are uncovering a difficult problem, whether they've been in an accident or what have you, and they're going to have some really loaded questions that they're trying to unravel. Having engaging content that answers those questions is very helpful. So those are a couple pieces. I mean, some other stuff has to do with really understanding your audience. There's some of us that are very analytical, so we want a long form answer. Other folks are quite personal, so having a testimonial and a picture, that sort of thing is kind of touches that warm fuzzy piece. Other folks are really pretty well down to the point. So leading off with what they really are, the kind of content they really came to engage with. Up front above the scroll could be helpful too. That's some.
Yeah, totally. Cool. And yeah, Michelle, if you can just kind of expound on Jared's follow-up, I think we can definitely get to that as well. In the meantime, Lenny, we had a question for you when it relates to video marketing. And I apologize, I don't actually have the names attached to a lot of these questions because we didn't have that in the type form. But somebody asked what the best ways are of incorporating video marketing into a law firm website.
I think there is a slight delay on Lenny's side. While Lenny's doing that, let me just follow up on Michelle's question here. She says it's confusing to clients in the sense that there's multiple firm sites. I don't think so, Michelle, just because if somebody does a search for Smith Law Firm, the site that's been around more, the general personal injury site, is probably going to rank first anyway. And so I don't think you have too much to be worried about there. That is also the site I would include on like business cards, so that if somebody went there, they would see, hey, listen, you do all types of all types of different practice areas within the personal injury niche. This is strictly, I would say, an SEO and a PPC play. And what I mean by that is the biggest benefit for this is if you can rank for, Cleveland dog bite lawyer in Google, to where people just believe that is your primary specialty. That's where the most benefit is going to be. Same would be true on the PPC side of things.
Yeah. So there is a bit of delay on my side, so I apologize to everybody watching the webinar. But hey, 15 seconds to listen to me talk. I've had people wait 30 seconds to hear me talk, so I mean we're okay here. As far as video marketing goes, it's super important. I mean, to the point that there's so many things you can do. And I think that's where a lot of people get kind of bogged down in it, is that they feel like okay, I know I need to do video. I've heard people say it's important, but I can do YouTube. I can put something on Wistia. I can put it in all these different places. And then you have video advertising, pre-roll ads before YouTube. And there's this plethora of ways to engage with video marketing. You can put videos on your website. You can do a YouTube channel and try and pull people in through YouTube, just through natural organic search on YouTube. The real answer and kind of how you should leverage it comes down to, for me, I would say you need to do all of it. But most people don't want to hear that because they don't have the budgets to do that, or the time. It's time intensive to create videos, edit them, get them to a really professional polish, and then get them out there. So leveraging videos is definitely going to be huge this coming year, and for attorneys especially. The reason I say this is because it's already huge in so many other verticals. Just about everybody except for attorneys have done a really good job of leveraging video in their digital marketing efforts, while attorneys are kind of lagging behind. And when I say that is, I was watching TV last night and I saw an ad on TV for a lawyer, and I thought, what a waste of money that is, because it was a mesothelioma ad. We've all seen that. If you or a loved one been hurt by asbestos. And I was laying there in bed watching TV, and I went, that guy spent however much money he spent, and I watched that ad, and I don't have mesothelioma. He wasted his money. And when you're doing digital marketing, the real benefit to it is that you can be so much more targeted. So whichever route you take, whether you're like, I just want to run some pre-roll ads before YouTube videos, or I want to start a YouTube channel and actually put a bunch of content out there, or if I just want to have it on my website, no matter which direction you go in, I think if you get on it now, you can be really pretty far ahead of the curve as far as the attorney vertical goes, because there are guys still running that stuff on cable TV, and it's just not really all that effective. So you have the opportunity to get way out in front, but it's also not. I mentioned something about it takes a lot of time to edit videos and get that professional polish. But you don't even have to do that either. It can be just as simple as prop your phone up on your desk and do a quick 2-3 minute video and throw it up on YouTube. The real key there is going to be optimization of the actual YouTube listing itself, the title, the description of the video, the keywords you're targeting. You've got to have that stuff ready to go. The actual video itself, you do want it to be good and full of information and everything, but it can go a long way as far as brand recognition or getting people kind of aware of you. Even if the video quality itself isn't perfect, you can get away with a lot just in marketing it the right way. But I would say, I think pre-roll ads for YouTube before the video plays, we've all seen those. You can skip the ad, or you have to wait 10 seconds for your ad to play. I've never seen an attorney pre-roll ad ever, and I think that is just a huge waste for most attorneys. Do it, get in there and get it, because there's nobody else in that space. And the really cool thing about that, again, is the targeting. You can target people that are watching a particular YouTube channel or have particular interests. So a lot better than just saying, okay, my ad's just going to run at 9 p.m. and I hope somebody with mesothelioma is watching. That's a shot in the dark. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on video. I think it's super important moving into this year, and I think anybody who's going to take advantage of it in the attorney vertical is going to be ahead of the game.
You're muted there, John. Lenny, real quick, Martin had a great question, and we were actually talking about this yesterday. Martin says, will SEO change if the video is embedded on the site, or if they are uploaded to YouTube? And we were talking yesterday about how much YouTube slows down the site, and where would you suggest people put their videos when they're, or how do people put their videos on the site when they're, trying to get them, on their practice area pages? Yesterday about how much YouTube slows down the site, and where would you suggest videos when, or how do people put their videos on the site when they're, trying to get them, practice their pages?
Okay, good question. Sorry, I gotta wait to hear the rest. Like you got, I hear Jared talk, and I gotta wait for him to finish his question. That's a great question though, and really it comes down to I. There's really two main ways, right? You put it on YouTube and you embed a YouTube player, or you put it on. Of course, I'm blanking now on the other big one. Not Wistia is one of them, but you get the idea. You're either embedding it through a third party service, or now you can do native HTML5 video. I'm a big fan of native HTML5 video because you're not loading external resources which slow your website down. Anytime you load in the YouTube player, you're going to make multiple calls to YouTube. You're going to have to download JavaScript from YouTube and a bunch of assets. The actual player itself all comes from YouTube, which slows your site down tremendously. Usually one single YouTube video on a page, at least in what I've seen, can lead to an extra full second to a second and a half of load time on your page. Whereas a native HTML5 video player is right there on the page, ready to go. You're not getting external stuff. So it's just the amount of downloading the video that it, or actually sending the video to the person. So I like that. I don't see much benefit to doing YouTube embeds anymore. Before HTML5 came out, we didn't really have a good way. It was all Flash players. It was stuff like that. And then YouTube came out with their player, and this is the best thing ever. But we're 10 years on now of YouTube being around, so it's kind of evolved into HTML5 is really the way to go if you want a speedy load time. As far as SEO purposes go, I think there is also some benefit to using a native player on your site, just because it's a video object. Google can get the idea that you've got a video, which they can do with their YouTube player as well. But I think there's more opportunities there and will be in the future to be able to add. I guess it depends on how technical you get. As Jared said, I'm the technical guru on the team. So I think things like alt tags on your websites for images, that's not really a thing with video embeds yet, but it could be down the road. And I think there's going to be as we move forward. Google's going to want to know, if you're running a native player, what's this video? What's it about? And Google is going to have to figure out, or at least the W3C, the guys who make the spec for for HTML, are going to have to figure out a way for us as SEOs to tell the search engines what this video is about. So I would lean just for the speed improvements to a native embed, but you certainly can get by with YouTube. I don't see, beyond the speed, which we know is a factor in your search engine optimization, I don't know that there's any benefit to one or the other. But that being the case, where speed is the only real factor there, I would go with the speedier solution.
So do you think that it's worthwhile to also be repurposing that content? So if it sounds like the smart move is to be hosting your videos on your actual site, is it worth also getting them out there and say YouTube, where people are actually spending a lot of their time? Is there any kind of SEO downside to that? What do you think? Anybody?
I'll let Lenny jump in there.
I don't think there's an SEO downside at all, and that's a great question. I would. Again, it's a lot of work, and that's usually what everybody comes back to is like, oh man, I don't want to upload this to my website and then go upload it to YouTube, then optimize the title and do all these things. But realistically, that's the right way to do it, which is why a lot of people choose agencies to do that type of work for them, because they don't, you want to try cases in court and work for your clients. You don't want to be uploading YouTube videos all the time. But realistically, yeah, because we all know Google's the #1 search engine, but the #2 search engine, I've been preaching this for years, so I know Jared and Todd and John have all heard this, but the #2 search engine isn't Bing. It's not Yahoo. It's not DuckDuckGo or Ask Jeeves. It's YouTube. That's where people go. If YouTube doesn't have, or if Google doesn't have the answer, a lot of times you go to YouTube. How do I X? Or what do I do in case this happens to me? For our PI attorneys, like what do I do if I just got slammed by a tractor trailer? Like, what am I supposed to do in this case? you put videos like that out there and you're going to get views and you're going to get people aware of your branding and potentially visiting your site and coming back to you, especially if you're linking back to your site in the YouTube description. I mean, so there's lots of tricks that, again, other verticals have already figured out how to do this and leverage these platforms. I just feel like attorneys aren't taking advantage of it as much as they should. So yeah, Todd, I think even if you use an embedded HTML5 player, you absolutely have to put it on YouTube. Using Vimeo or Wistia doesn't really help you because they're both proprietary. They're not like YouTube. Nobody goes, I don't think, at least from the metrics I've seen, nobody's going over to Vimeo and searching for videos. Like it's kind of the premium, like, ooh, I'm a high-end video person. They would use something like Vimeo or Wistia. But in the end, if you go there, you've cut out all the searches that happen on YouTube. And if you're looking for business, you're looking to optimize your presence digitally, you can't ignore YouTube. Even if you're just on your website, you go for speed, but you've got to be there too. It's the same reason why you wouldn't just run a social media platform inside your marketing website. No, you have to be on Facebook too. you don't try and rebuild that inside. So you definitely have to leverage it.
Cool, thanks.
Todd, Michelle had a question that I think you would probably be the most appropriate here to answer. How do you feel about Instagram marketing for lawyers?
Well, it really depends on where your potential clients are. That's where you want to be. These days, generally, your clients are going to be. We find people are more likely to either be in LinkedIn or Facebook, et cetera. But if you have a specific niche, power niche, where people are, it's something very highly visual and kind of hip, then Instagram might make sense. Where it would be a mistake is trying to kind of do everything at once, just because it's something that we've heard of. So I would lean towards not investing a lot in Instagram unless you have a very, very good reason for being on there. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. And if I could just jump in real quick on that too, I think that's some great points. The other thing too that I've been thinking about specifically with Instagram is I think it can work if it's like a solo practice and you can actually highlight the feed like on your homepage. I think the key to this is, again, like Todd mentioned, like if your target market is there, like I don't think your target market is going to find you on Instagram, but what I would want them to do is when they land on your website, I want them to think that you're awesome. I want them to think that you're the celebrity in your niche. And I think you can kind of highlight that with some really cool, shots that you have like a feed, coming through your homepage or bio page or something along those lines. I think it can work.
Yes, especially when you really understand your niche, you really zeroed in. Like we've seen some people do some great stuff for motorcycle accidents type of things, but they're also really plugged into that community, and that's kind of part of what their brand experience is. Just kind of this person is plugged in there and shows up everywhere within that community.
Yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, it definitely speaks to the importance of understanding both your audience and the platforms that certain audiences cater to. When we work with like business attorneys, we're a lot more adamant about using LinkedIn than when it's for personal injury attorneys. I mean, Facebook is, everybody across the board should have Facebook because Facebook is, there's no like very specific demographic. Everybody has a Facebook account. But when it comes to LinkedIn, the data shows that it's much more business type people. And then it's really the same answer for things like Pinterest and Instagram is definitely like a younger crowd. So if you know that you have a younger crowd that you're targeting with your practice areas, then it probably would make a lot of sense to investigate more into that. But if you're looking more for a general audience, then there are probably 2 or 3 platforms that would make more sense to look at first, like Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. So let's get to some SEO questions. So one of the ones we had that I thought would be really good to touch on, something that we've been talking a lot about in the past years, is Google Maps. And this would be for Jared, our resident SEO guru. When it comes to Google Maps, what are the different ranking factors? And specifically, how does proximity to searcher play into Google Maps rankings? Yeah.
So a lot of people know about kind of the general ranking factors, which is NAP consistency. That is the name, address, phone number. They need to be consistent both on your website, on your Google My Business listing, on all of the various directories, profiles that are out there that list your business. I think that's probably the most well known and probably one of the more important ranking factors. I think the thing that most attorneys don't think about as it relates to map ranking factors these days is it really doesn't matter if you're ranking top 3 if you are way far behind on your reviews compared to your competitors. What I mean by that is in the last webinar, I shared an example of a criminal defense attorney here in Cleveland, and he had like 2 to 3 times the number of reviews that the next guy had in the map results, and there's 3 results there. And so as far as I'm concerned, it really doesn't matter if you're number 2 or number 3 or even number 1 in a niche, if your top competitor has 2 to 3 times the reviews you have. So I think the NAP consistency, as a general ranking factor is very important, but don't forget about really what drives clicks, and that's going to be the reviews. And really spending time this year on reviews, generating reviews from your clients on your Google My Business listing, I believe is one of the most important things any attorney can do to grow their practice. As it relates to proximity to the searcher, that's another big thing that we're seeing more and more of at Google, using the searcher's location as a primary ranking factor. So if I do a search right now for a sandwich on my phone, if I'm using, if I call Surrey, or if I'm looking for a lawyer, Google is going to, they've got me dialed in exactly where I'm at, and they're going to be showing either sandwich shops or attorneys, whatever I'm looking for, nearest to me. And they're going to show, hey, this lawyer is, half a mile away from you. So it is becoming a bigger deal. I had a meeting just last week with a firm in a pretty decent sized city. And what they were actually talking about was opening up an office in the opposite side of the city for this very purpose. So they have a very powerful website. They're ranking really well on, let's just say, the north side of the city. And they're like, listen, we're looking at doing a south side, office location so that we can always show up regardless of where the searcher is. So that's going to be something that people are going to want to, kind of look at.
Absolutely. It's really interesting. What's interesting about that too is because it's not something that you can just control easily on the back end. There's nothing you can do about that kind of thing. It's just where your verified office location is. That's quite an interesting strategy if you're in a big city to actually open up multiple offices across the city, primarily for the purpose of being able to show up for queries more often. That's
It is. And real quickly on that same point, one of the big things we've noticed, I would say in the last 30 to 45 days, is non-staffed offices. Our non-staffed office locations are beginning to get suspended in Google. Google's really, really cracking down specifically on law firms who have these virtual offices that are not staffed. So if you are thinking in 2018 of opening a new office location, I would highly recommend, at least for the first probably 6 to 8 months of the year, make sure that's staffed, and so that we can, kind of wait for Google to blow over. I mean, again, they're not going to be as aggressive as they are for right now forever. But I would say at least for right now, the next 6 to 8 months, make sure you have all of your office locations being staffed, because Google is literally calling businesses asking if there's somebody at that location. So big deal.
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
Yeah, we had a good run for 5-6 years, Todd. I mean.
Sure.
Yeah, and when they call, they don't typically say like, "Hey, this is Google. We want to make." Yeah, they're kind of tricky about it. Like, yeah. Cool. Another question related to Google for Todd. Somebody asked, "Are Google reviews more important than other testimonials and reviews?" Which we talk a ton about the importance of reviews and that they're one of the most important digital assets you have. But the question we get a lot is, someone maybe just like emailed me a review or something, or they put it on a different profile. Like, should attorneys be aggressive about making sure that their clients, when leaving reviews, do so through Google? And if so, why is that the case?
Sure. Well, again, it's about being where your potential clients are, and for most of our clients, that's going to be the search results. Nothing stands out like those beautiful 5 stars and having 2 or 3 times as much as your competitors in that local 3 stack. So yeah, by and large, I would recommend most firms to focus on those Google reviews. If you're in some other type of a particular niche where your potential clients are spending a lot of time elsewhere, then that might be, you might go be more aggressive in Avo or something. But really, it's all about Google. It's all about those stars. We've seen just kind of night and day differences when people finally kind of crack the code on how to get reviews showing up for their offices, and for the folks who are able to report on like why did a potential client call them over and over. It's Google reviews. I saw those reviews. Seems like you guys got a great reputation. Google reviews. It's what it's all about.
Yeah, I think the number is something like 80% of people, or it might be even more than that, trust online reviews as much as a recommendation from a friend.
Right.
Which, when you realize, the back end of that with like Amazon and stuff, that there are companies out there like paying for a lot of these reviews, it's kind of nuts that it's that trusted, but it really is. It makes a big difference. And in relation to that, somebody asked, is it possible to hide Google or Facebook reviews or to delete them? And I would probably add on to that, if not, what would be your recommendation for how to handle negative or poor reviews?
Sure. I mean, nothing really quite stings like in a really lousy review, especially when you didn't really maybe deserve it. But in general, I think there might be some cases where if it's just an outright lie, you might be able to get a review taken off. But for the most part, no. It's kind of the whole point of having reviews is that people can, if they had a bad experience, they can leave that too. So what we've seen people do is, on the one hand, take a breath and maybe don't reply right away, because if sometimes somebody might just be very angry and be ready to leave you bad reviews everywhere once you start interacting with them. So I would kind of give them a little bit of time to cool off, and then generally I would respond and just kind of say, hey, whatever your side of the story is, or that you can appreciate where they're at, just maybe not necessarily, not what's the word? I don't know, but giving some authentic feedback about what your side of the story was. But the best way to respond to negative reviews is just keep on getting more good ones. Again, we'll use that phrase, cracking the code. When people start really understanding how to talk with their satisfied clients and getting those reviews up, you'd be surprised how quickly they can add up, and that will bury a negative review or two pretty easily.
Yeah, and as Andrea mentions, I mean, negative reviews, you can see it in a positive way, because if you can show that you can work through those issues and respond without freaking out, then that can also be a good signal to people. If you can, say, you can really reach out to them and show another side of you dealing with that kind of conflict.
Totally, yeah, that's a good point, Andrew.
Yeah. Jared, a question for you from Faisal. An actual scenario. So say your overall visibility is decreasing due to a sharp decline in one or two keywords. Should you, as a business, expect to find out what the actual cause of the drop is, or do you just continue trying to strengthen the overall SEO with video content that addresses those keywords that have fallen in ranking? So I guess do you really try to dig in and do the investigative work of like what happened here, or do you just say, who knows, let's just double down and try to get it back up?
Yeah, no, I would definitely perform an analysis and try to figure out what happened. I mean, there's Google updates literally happening every single day. And then Google has bigger updates that occur, on a quarterly basis or twice a year. But, most people don't know that there's literally updates being performed every single day of the year by Google. So I would go in, I would analyze it. I would try to figure out, hey, maybe who went up. That would be maybe a good first place to start for you is, who's doing a little bit better now. If you dropped, and I don't know, a sharp decline. Okay. So that's more than a couple spots. But I would see, who's doing well. I would also look at, your backlink profile and determine if maybe Google devalued some of the links that you have. One of the things we noticed here back in December was that Google devalued scholarship links, which were a really big deal a couple of years ago. So yeah, I would try to get to the bottom of it if you can, because you could be still doing something, or there could be something on your website that's still hurting your forward momentum and progress. And if you just continue on forward, and don't actually fix the problem, you'll never improve.
It's good. I'm actually curious, something I'm not quite clear on right now. We've talked a lot about scholarship links in the past, and if you're not familiar with that, basically it's, you create a scholarship campaign on your website, and you create an application process and everything, and then you work with specific universities to actually post that on your site. And while it's a good PR move in general, the big reason for SEO agencies doing it is because those .edu sites are usually, really strong sites, and the backlinks were pretty good. Backlink profile is just all of the different backlinks that are linking to your site. So Jared, I'm curious, do you still recommend doing the scholarship campaigns, or do you think that that's a thing of the past?
No, it's definitely a thing of the past. The reason why Google would have devalued them was because they became overrun and they were no longer valuable. They were overrun by spam sites like payday loan, insurance-related sites. So it was one of the things we saw, kind of coming here at Blackfin when, any link source becomes overrun with websites that are not relevant to yours. You should try to get off them, as quickly as you can.
Interesting. Very good. Yeah. Cool. Another SEO question for you. We're getting a little low on the SEO questions here. I think this is the last SEO question we actually had, unless, of course, people have some as we go. Somebody was asking about long tail SEO keywords. Like, how exactly do they work? How should they fit into your SEO strategy? And then also, as a second part to that, is it something to consider for PPC as well?
Yeah. So just to kind of clarify what a long tail keyword is, a more general keyword, let's just say for medical malpractice, is literally the keyword medical malpractice or medical malpractice lawyer. One of the things that you are going to want to look at, both from an SEO standpoint, and I would say writing probably blog posts, but also a PPC standpoint, is going to be writing about, and again, longer tail keywords. And these are questions I would say that people are asking in Google. And what I mean by that is, if you do a search right now for medical malpractice, you're going to see at the bottom of Google a bunch of search suggestions. Like I was doing a search this morning, and it was like, what are the statute of limitations for medical malpractice in Ohio? That would be a great blog post for you to create that will rank SEO-wise in Google. You can also promote that via PPC. And there's a number of other questions like that. If you just do a generic search for whatever the practice area is, bankruptcy, you'll see, what's the difference between Chapter 7 bankruptcy and Chapter 13. And so those would be long tail keywords. And that's really growing in importance with voice search. Back in the day, most people just did a search for lawyer, and then they were getting smarter and doing searches for injury lawyer or personal injury lawyer or Cleveland personal injury lawyer. Now they're saying, what's the best injury lawyer near me that specializes in brain injury cases? So we're seeing more and more of those types of things. So it is something to take a look at.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, those can also be people who are pretty far down the funnel, meaning that they might be pretty well ready to call. So usually, 3 or 4 word phrases to be highly specific to what it is that you have to offer. Yeah.
I definitely think it speaks to the importance of having an ongoing content plan, whether that be producing blog content on a regular basis that's sort of buttressed by some good keyword research, and then also even like FAQs and things like that. I think we're seeing are also really important. And the good thing about that as well is if it can be a little bit of you're not going to get a lot of volume necessarily, but when you do get someone that's asking a question that's very close to the question that you're answering, sometimes you'll get those Google featured snippets right at the top of the page as well. Looks great and brings in a ton of traffic. So cool. This was an interesting question that I think probably would go to Jared, but anybody else wants to chime in, feel free, of course. Somebody asked how we determine our fees for marketing help.
For which part?
For marketing in general. The price, they said that the pricing seems really varied from company from agency to agency. So how do we determine our fees?
A great question. So there's 2 things that I look at. I'll speak to the SEO side of things because that's where I spend most of my time. There's 2 things that I look at with an SEO campaign. The first thing is, how strong is your website? If we go into a niche and we just have to take you from the 8th position to the 1st position, well, that takes a lot less work than a brand new website that has no rankings whatsoever. The second thing that I look at is your competition. And this was one of the very, very first lessons I ever learned from, kind of the originator of SEO, at least he claims to be. His name is Bruce Clay. And his whole philosophy was basically you look at the competition and then you put together a strategy to one-up them. And so, I will look at, the prospect site that's interested in our services. How strong is it? Where do they currently rank? And then what is their competitors doing right now? And what do I feel it's going to take in order to, again, one-up them? So it's those two factors, and most of it's just up in my brain as it relates to this specific price. But the reality is, the thing that I'm most looking at within those two factors is the backlink profile. What are the quality of links? How many of the quality links do we need in order to compete? Because we can finish map stuff and on page in the first month, but if you're in a really competitive market, you're going to need maybe 8 to 12 months of great link building in order to boost your domain authority to a point where you can rank.
Yeah. And I believe in our sales rubric, we also have, we actually separate it by market size.
We
so
do.
if you're in a top 50 market or something, this is where it's going to be because of how much more competitive it is in general. But if you're in a smaller market with, less than 100,000 people in it or something, then it's a lot more manageable because the competition is a lot less fierce. So,
Correct.
Yeah. Andrea asked a couple questions that I'm going to handle real fast. One of them is related to SEO words on a page. And then words on a blog as well, if there's a standard best practice. This is actually similar to the pricing question. A lot of it comes to the competition market size. We have different best practices for different market sizes. So for a small market size, we'll say, for a practice area page, we recommend having at least about 750 words. That usually ensures that you have more content than your competitors, which is a great thing in Google for a variety of reasons. It's not the most important or the ultimate ranking factor, but at the end of the day, if you are competitive with your competitors in Google, then it can be sort of the thing that takes you, to the next level beyond them. If you're in a bigger market, though, then we generally recommend, at least 1,500 words, which might be surprising to some. We don't see a lot of websites that we begin working with that has that many, but that's where we like to start with the bigger markets. And then for blogs, we actually just changed this recently. Up until I think it was October of last year, we generally would recommend at least 500 words on blog posts. We did more for some clients, but that was kind of where we started at, and it was where the majority of our clients were at. And we decided that it was time to change that to 1,000 words a piece because, again, the competition is getting more fierce. Google is really prioritizing lengthy, high-quality content, and it's a good strategy to have. It can be a lot if you're doing it all yourself, but if you're outsourcing it or if you're trying to figure out how many words you should have, then that's a good place to begin. And in fact, when we're auditing new client sites, if we find a bunch of blog posts that are less than 400 words, what we'll do sometimes is compile them actually into longer blog posts or FAQ pages. Or if we get some resistance on that, we'll even just de-index them, because at the end of the day, if you have a lot of really short pages and Google is, Jared, the way you explain this is, there's the primary and then the secondary index.
Yeah.
The primary index is made up of things that Google views as really high quality pages. Secondary is not so much. And if a lot of your site is made up of secondary or of pages that are in the secondary index, then it dilutes the quality of the rest of your site. So if you've got a lot of short content, not only is it not going to rank very well, but it could actually prohibit or make it more difficult to rank the good content on your site. So it's generally important that across the board, it's lengthy quality stuff. And then the other part from Andrew, which Jared would actually be better for you, is it important to have links to research like Wikipedia, or I would say generally if you do external linking, you'd want it to stuff better than Wikipedia. But it is a question that we were talking about recently, is how does external linking play into SEO, on-page SEO?
Yeah, so external linking is natural. And I think that's one of the things that you have to look at is kind of across the web, what's natural and normal. If you go to Huffington Post, are they only linking to, other articles on Huffington Post, or are they linking to, outside websites? And the reality is, every real blog links out to other sites. And so you should take that same mindset. Yes, are you sending possibly traffic away? Possibly, yes. I would probably limit my external links to blog posts and not like practice area pages. But I would say if you didn't link out to other sites, it would be unnatural. And Google is certainly looking at that.
Yeah. Good. So we've got about 10, 15 minutes left. We had a couple questions that I thought it would be good to kind of get everybody's opinion on. And this was a question that we asked in when we did the trends report this past winter in November, December. We did a survey to go along with that to get some kind of hard data about where different attorneys were. And one of the questions we asked is, like, do you plan on increasing or decreasing your marketing budget? The majority said increasing. Some said they're going to keep it the same, and then a smaller percentage said that they were going to decrease it. And a couple of questions we got related to that. So it's another two-parter. One, if I'm increasing my budget, how are my marketing dollars best spent? If I want to put more money into it and I want to get more aggressive, where would that be? And then the other part is, if I'm going the other way and I'm deciding to scale back a little bit, which elements are the most vital? So Lenny, I know we've got like 10 seconds or so, but we can start with you on this one. Okay, his smile seems to be catching up with me a little bit, I think. Maybe not.
So John, when someone has a delay, you let them go last, because I can watch Jared and Todd and see when they stop talking and know when I should start. But when you start with me, I've got to sit here for 10 seconds and wait for you to finish talking before I know that you asked me to talk. To be realistic, at this point, you asked, if you're decreasing your budget, don't do that. I mean, realistically, you can't. That's my opinion on it. We're getting way too competition heavy at this point. The vertical, as far as digital marketing goes, is very saturated in most markets, bigger markets, unless you're in the middle of nowhere. You have competition in a lot of it. And to think that I can decrease my marketing budgets and still survive in that kind of an atmosphere where your competition is increasing maybe 2, 3, 10-fold their spending, that's the worst thing you could do, in my opinion. But you want to be smart with how you spend. That doesn't mean just blow your money and just spend it on nothing and you have no idea what you're getting out of it. I think this is going to come down to each one of our individual strong points. If you're going to decrease your budget, in my mind, focus it on your website. Jared's is probably going to be SEO, but no, I wouldn't decrease your budget. I think that's the wrong thing to do. You got to be looking at increasing your budget, because this is the way we're headed. Now, if you are increasing your budget, I think realistically it comes to taking advantage of, at first, if you're not, take advantage of the tried and true things that work. If you're not doing PPC, pay-per-click advertising, do it. If you're not yet involved in YouTube, do it. Get a video guy and start producing some videos. But Todd mentioned earlier in the session about taking on too much. You just kind of in passing, you said something about that. And I think that's important too. It can be very detrimental, actually, to go, okay, I'm spending $500 a month now, and I'm going to go to $30,000 a month, and I want to spend all of it right now. Do everything that I can do. It's a lot to deal with, and it can completely overwhelm not only you as the attorney trying to deal, because you're going to get you start doing this stuff, whoever's doing it, someone in-house or an agency, they're going to be asking you questions. What do you want me to do with this? What do you want me to do with that? Do you have pictures for this? It's going to be lots of stuff going, and to manage it all is pretty crazy. And usually, unless the agency is gigantic, every agency I've worked in, that's always been a problem of a client wants to come in and do everything, and it becomes a nightmare even in an agency setting where it's like we're trying to manage 25 different things. I've always found that taking a stepped approach, try one thing. If that works and gives you a positive ROI, great. Now that that's working and all the kinks are worked out right after you spend a little bit, now plow some money into that and then start small with something new. And once that's good to go, plow money in there and then just keep going step by step. Eventually, you will be spending $50,000 a month. And that may sound scary to think, man, I'm spending $50,000 a month. But realistically, if you did it that way, everything should be returning money back into your coffers and a lot more than you're spending. So putting out a large amount on your marketing should be returning, again, 2, 3, 10-fold what you spent out. But that's hard to realize and come to fruition if you're just dumping money at it and going, I hope something that we're doing will work, because there's too many moving wheels at one time. It's the same way most of us have built businesses. You don't go crazy all in because it gets to be too much to deal with. You've got to take a stepped and phased approach and work up. And when you do, so to say where you should spend your marketing dollars, I think I've gone on a little too long about it, but it really comes down to where your clients are. You know what I mean? PPC is good. There's no way you can lose there if it's done correctly. You can't lose spending money on your website because that's the hub. That's where you're sending everybody for all your digital marketing efforts. SEO, you can't really lose on as long as it's doable. And you got to find somebody who's honest. I may be stepping over what Jared might have said, but I would think, Jared would tell you, if you talk to Jared and say, hey, can I win in this market with this niche? He might go, nope, and we're not going to take you as a client, because it's not okay. I mean, for us to take your money and you get nothing out of it, but not everybody's honest. So you've got to be very careful about who you deal with when you do these types of things. So it really depends, So a lawyer that's in one niche, like we even talked about, Facebook may not be the right place for you, but LinkedIn is. Or maybe you're doing. We have a client that does BitTorrent defense, which I thought was a cool niche and kind of up to date. And when I say up to date, I mean her target market is not 60-year-old people. So that informs me something. And she's actually going after, I want people who are 18, 19 years old that are out there using BitTorrent. Okay. I would tell every single attorney I've ever talked to, Snapchat is not a place you should be. Her, maybe. That's where that market is. Those kids are not on Facebook anymore. Facebook is for people my age and up, 35 and above. Nowadays, you talk to anybody who's 18, 19, they go, oh, Facebook, that's where my mom and dad hang out. But I'm not on Facebook. You know what I mean? So it really depends on your market and who you're going after, where those marketing dollars should be spent. And the only way to really get that information is to work with someone who's done it for a long time, and so that they can give you the advice of just having done it for hundreds and hundreds of people to go, this is where that market exists and where we find, spending money right here will get a good return for you.
That's great. Jared, Todd, let's go next.
Good.
Good question.
Yeah, I can kind of keep it a little brief. What we really, the tactics that we would use vary depending on your market and what your goals are. But really moving into 2018, taking an aggressive, diversified approach is what we recommend. What we mean by that would be getting smart about the way that you're doing SEO. Like, do you just start with the basics? Do you really know what your keywords are? Are you just getting off on a really solid foundation? More intentional PPC approach. There's all kinds of ways. Lenny mentioned dumping money, and although you can get good results out of PPC, you can also just kind of throw a lot of money at the problem. So being very intentional about what your actual strategy is there are two big areas. And my mind just went blank. So those are so getting intentional about your PPC and getting smart about your SEO is where I would start. How about you, Jared?
Yeah. For increasing, what I wrote down was diversifying traffic sources. So I'm guessing you want to increase because you're already maybe doing okay on SEO or PPC or both. We have a client that's spending a lot of money right now on both SEO, PPC, doing well. And it was kind of like, what else can I do? And I was like, well, there's a couple directories that rank like top 3 for your primary keywords. Why not start advertising on those directories? They're obviously getting some traffic. So if there are directories that are ranking well in your niche, maybe you're number 2 or number 3, there's a directory that's just stuck in that number 1 position. There's a couple niches where it's like FindLaw has just locked up, that number 1 spot. There's no harm in advertising on there. So I would look to diversify traffic sources. Don't just be dependent on one. For decreasing, I wrote down spend more time writing and getting reviews. So whatever, if a client came to me and they're like, listen, I have to cut back, I'd say, okay, I want a blog post from you every single week, 1,000 words or more. And then I want you to spend, some time getting reviews get 1 or 2, a week, and that will hopefully ramp things up for you. In a couple months, maybe you can come back.
That's great. Yeah, great answers. If you guys have any more questions, now would be the time. We've got about 5 minutes left, so maybe we got time for 1 or 2 more. We do have one from Roger. That's a good question.
Before we go to Rogers, can we go back to Faisal down? It was one of the first questions. He said he's got an established law firm focused on criminal defense. Let me just tackle that real quickly.
Sure.
So the question is, you have an established criminal defense firm. You want to get into PI. You have solid organic SEO rankings. What do? Do you create a new website? And honestly, it really depends on the niche. You have a couple options. One is to create a new website. You are starting from scratch to tackle a practice area the size of PI. That's a little bit different than what I was referring to earlier, where it was like, hey, just go after dog bites. So I would probably try to figure out how you can utilize the strength and authority of your current website to rank in the PI market. And I would do that in one of 2 ways, depending on your site, how it's structured. I would set up a subdomain. So you have like injury.fasal.com, or I would set up like fasal.com/injury, and I would hide all the criminal defense stuff from the personal injury section of the website. So it kind of depends, but I would try to utilize the authority you have.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And then, Roger's question relates really to return on investment, ROI. What should law firms expect when it comes to the ROI that they can get? I know that in Clio's, I think it was a 2017 report, where they had a lot of hard data in there. They said that the majority of attorneys generally expect around 200% ROI, which would be just doubling basically the money that you put in. But Jared, do you see that as ambitious enough, or is that a good place to sort of begin? Is if you can 2x what you put in?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to start for a site that has been promoting itself for less than 24 months. If you've been promoting yourself more or longer than that, I would hope for a much higher ROI.
Great. Yeah. And then I think there was one other one from Martin that we didn't get to that related to the content link. If you have 6 blog posts that won't change because they're valid for everyone who visits, for SEO purposes, should I just turn that into a page?
When you say they're valid for everyone, would you want everybody to view these 6 posts? If so, I would definitely say put it on a single page. I would also be curious as to the length of these blog posts. If they're under 1,000 words, I would also say combine them. That's something we're looking at internally. Is if a client has 30 blog posts that are like 200-300 words, just create 1 or 2 FAQ new web pages out of those blog posts.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I would do.
Which is definitely good too, because just for I think the evergreen side of things as well. If you have blog posts and you're continuing to write blog posts, they're just going to be pushed further and further down. If you've got 6 blog posts that perform really well and really answer some key questions, then it makes sense to pull those out and make them into an FAQ section, or even sub pages to a practice area or something, so that they're more visible on the site. So
it's good. Real quick, I want to answer a question from Martin. If I absolutely have to choose, should I focus on PPC or SEO? And Jen had a great response. SEO was long-term, PPC short-term, and I agree with that. One other angle to think about is, let's just say again, you're in a market like Cleveland, reasonably sized market. If you said, hey, what should I do, PPC or SEO? I would say, if you're having to ask that question and your budget is small, I would look at maybe a city just outside of Cleveland. I'm in a city called Avon. There's 25,000 people. I'm sure whoever ranks number 1 for PI or bankruptcy, they're going to get a reasonable amount of business. I would start where you can win. And so, I actually created kind of a test site in my local market. We were able to rank it in, 4 or 5 months. So you can get SEO results in a reasonable period of time if you're going after a market that doesn't have too much competition. So that would be one more angle on top of, what Jen said, which is definitely true.
great. Yeah, and I think that really, especially if you're just starting off from scratch and you are in a more competitive market, starting with PPC in a good way. I mean, you need landing pages and everything to go along with that, but starting PPC to get a steady flow of cases, and then kind of over time transitioning that to the SEO, because that's going to be a more long-term viable option where you're not having to dump a lot of money into it. It's kind of a nice timeline to think through things. So, all right.
Skype.
Great. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We will be sending you the replay as well, so you can have this on file. Yeah, Jared, any final words?
No. Awesome. Cool. I just appreciate everybody coming out.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah, some great questions. Thanks, guys.
Yep, yeah, absolutely.